Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are. Hosted by Desiree Duffy.
We're talking about books that make you believe in karma during Christmas time? Karma. What does that have to do with Christmas? More perhaps than you think. After all, cautionary tales around the holidays are something that we find in stories like It's a Wonderful Life or Dickens' A Christmas Carol. There is this sense during the holidays that things should be put right, that people who are lost can be shown a way, and that karma, the overriding sense of order in the universe, the idea that things happen for a reason, and that there really is a purpose, well, that sense is real. The book we're talking about touches on these ideas and more. It is called Christmas Karma. It is by the prolific author, Gerald Everett Jones, who is here with us now on Books That Make You. Gerald, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Desiree. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yay. So let's start with the big question. Karma. We've heard of that term at the very least. Can you tell us, describe what karma is and how it relates to your book?
Well, it's an ancient Eastern tradition, and in this book it's more in line with what you were talking about with Dickens' Christmas Carol, Wonderful Life. There's a tradition in Western literature of Christmas as a time for, if we call it, life review. Now, in the Eastern tradition of karma, which is all tied up with the reincarnation of souls, when you pass into the next world, and there's no death, there's only transition. When you pass into the next world, you have a chance for life review. Your soul looks back on the previous incarnation, and you ask yourself, you judge yourself, okay? It's the whole Christian Judgment Day, but the soul actually reflects on itself and says, what did I get right? What did I get wrong? What did I set out to achieve? Why did I take this incarnation? What lessons did I learn? And then the big question is, what do I want to do next? How do I want to be incarnated next? And so we have some fun with that at Christmas Karma. It was not it is a, you could say a dramedy, you could say a family comedy. It's very lighthearted in parts. And it did not set out to be a metaphysical book in any way. It is more in tone, it's more, and actually in plot, it is more like if you saw the movie Down and Out in Beverly Hills. Okay, unexpected visitors, unwanted visitors, and it turns out during the holidays. And the main character, as far as the karmic situation is concerned, this series of people, and it's several people who knock on her door when she's totally unprepared. She didn't even want Christmas to happen this year. Okay, she's not particularly faithful. She's kind of a backslider. She's had some pain in her life that she kind of blames herself for. And she doesn't want these visitors, and also after a while she begins to think that this is some kind of life review for her. Maybe they're showing up to kind of tot up the accounts. Maybe she doesn't have much longer. She starts to get very weird and paranoid as it goes on. And, of course, this is not only a cause for reflection, it's something of an engine of comedy. Because one of the very earliest visitors and the one who comes to stay is her father, who's been missing for 30 years. And he says, I'm moving in, and by the way, I still have the title to this house, and I need to sell it because I need money.
So he's really there disrupting her world.
He's turning it upside down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's not a nice man.
I love it. I love it.
And he's borderline homeless. Or he has been. It looks that way. So
I love the fact that it harkens to Ebenezer Scrooge. It harkens to a Christmas Carol in many ways.
Yeah, he's kind of Marley's ghost, goes to Christmas past. And like I said, Dickens' Christmas Carol is very much a matter of life review for Scrooge. Mm-hmm. And, of course, there's that transformative power of agape, of learning to give, of learning that, the greatest gift you can get is to give, because you get back so much more than you might expect. So yes, I mean, Willa undergoes a transformation, and it's great fun, but it's also there's also lots of twists and turns, and there's going to be a lot of things that happen to her that are totally unexpected. Oh. Including what you might call magical reality. I'll insert that much of a spoiler.
Okay. Well, I love the fact that you're bringing together karma, which is, like you said, very much considered an Eastern philosophy, and conjoining it with Christianity. And I think that's important, too, because you touched on the idea of giving, the concept of a life review. And looking at things from a very universal perspective, it doesn't matter necessarily the precise religion that you might have come from. The time of the year, when we're doing this kind of respective or reflective type of a look back on our lives, that's a universal thing. That's something that makes sense and resonates with us no matter what religion or what culture or where we might have happened to have been born. Would you agree with that?
Well, I would, and I would also say that I had taken this point of view from the standpoint of a main character who, her background is Protestant Christian, but she hasn't attended church in years, and she considers herself something of a backslider or an I don't knowist. And I feel as though, especially in U.S. culture these days, Christmas is what? 70% a commercial holiday. Mm-hmm. As much of a Roman celebration as it is Christian, and I think also, and I think my friend and I was raised as a fundamentalist Christian, actually. Mm-hmm. I think many of my Christian friends would agree that the notion of God as a white Santa in the sky who gives you what you pray for is kind of a childish viewpoint of the divinity, okay? If you go back to the Greeks and Aristotle, God is the unmoved mover. God is not in heaven so much as pervasive in the universe, everywhere. God is some of the New Age philosophers say, God is all that there is. And you say, rocks? and yet scientifically, if you think about the Big Bang, if in the beginning was the Word spoke the Word, and suddenly bang, there's a universe. Well, how could the universe be other than the Creator? The Creator created the universe of itself. Mm-hmm. And if you go back to, there's a verse in the Bible, there's also a verse in the Quran that says, I'm closer than your neck vein. Okay. So God being immanent in the creation, God, again, I come back to New Age. A New Age or New Thought point of view would be when you pray, you're not asking for, I don't have this, give it to me. You are asking for the vision to see that God's perfection and that what you have in the creation is already everything you need. And that leads us to, it's kind of funny because Christmas Karma began as a screenplay.
Okay.
It actually was an award-winning screenplay. And it was originally called Just Drop By for reasons,
all right,
you can imagine. And then I got the idea of setting it at Christmas time. It's like, wouldn't it be funnier This woman isn't ready for Christmas, and all these people are knocking on our door, and, the tree isn't even decorated. She hasn't done the laundry. She hasn't even thought about dinner. And, wouldn't it be annoying? Okay. And so then the thought came, okay, a matter of karma, of putting her life in order and setting things right, and a matter of, okay, there are all these things that she dearly wants, including the return of some of the loved ones that have been gone out of her life, and she's not even sure whether they're alive or dead. Again, it's a matter of seeing, don't we have a home here? What is a home? What is the essence of a home? How do you make a home? How do you sustain a home? How do you keep not only fires burning in the fireplace, but how do you keep love burning in your heart? These are at the core of the holiday, the holiday, I think.
Right, exactly. And where you live, one of the things that I find is really fascinating is you're in Kenya right now. You're originally from the United States, but you also live in an area where you have many Christians and you have Muslims too, and there's a sense of peace and harmony that sometimes people from outside of an environment like that might be surprised at.
Well, it's a fascinating environment. It is very different. I think we look at Kenya. I mean, my wife and I traveled here for years, maybe a decade, various times that we visited, before we decided this is a place that we might want to live for a longer period. We've moved here. It's kind of an open question how long we will be here. Mm-hmm. She's working in wildlife conservation, and me, I'm a writer. I just say, hey, listen, wherever you are, just let me pack a suitcase.
Right.
That includes my laptop.
I just need to type, right? Yeah.
Yeah. In many ways, I've in terms of my to-do list, my work agenda, I've probably accomplished as much here or more than I would if I'd stayed in Los Angeles. So. And that's just in less than a year in the time we've been here. But yes, Kenya is a predominantly Christian country. And it's interesting because, and they only achieved their independence from Britain in 1963. Mm-hmm. And you would expect, as a result of that this would be primarily an Anglican country. And that is so not true. They, for whatever reason, and I haven't delved deeply into the history, but the government's laws, even before independence, actually incentivized missionaries. It encouraged missionaries to come. Mm-hmm. And they came from all denominations. And you will find the predominant Christianity among Kenyans these days is what you call Pentecostal fundamentalist Christians. They have very large congregations that are, exuberantly singing and shouting, look very much like, going to church in the hood in Los Angeles. And those denominations have morphed into becoming the Kenyan version of those. So there is very much this sense of, God, I need a new car. And that, it's a long discussion, but then the Muslims have been here since ancient times, and that's why here on the seacoast where we are by the Indian Ocean, it is a predominantly Muslim community. Mm-hmm. But the interesting thing is, in the modern day, so much of Kenya, the core economy is tourism. That let's behave nice for the tourists because there are a lot, and most of the tourists are people, Mzungus and Mzungus from Europe. So you've got Germans, Brits, a lot of Italians here on the coast, and so that it's interesting. It creates very much of a melting pot community, and frankly, there are a lot of European tourists, especially who come here to hook up, to get married a second time.
Okay.
You're going to see more mixed couples here than maybe anywhere on earth, and that's interesting too, because the other thing you'll find, and it's something of an aside, but the other thing you'll find is that it's not that there's no racism in Kenya, but the strongest racism is between the Kenyan tribes, of which I think there are 42.
Oh, interesting.
So white people just guess. Okay, of course there are some Kenyan-born whites that are Brits and South Africans and Germans, quite a few, Belgians. But again, those are people who they're even kind of on the fringe of society. They're in a different economic class. They're just they're welcome here because they traditionally spend money, and that's great. But among the Kenyans, and I had a colleague who came here from Los Angeles. She's actually from Belize, but she's about as dark as you can be. And she married. She was a rapper, and she married a man who also is a rapper, but he's mulatto and he's light skinned. The Kenyans thought he was Arabic. And she said they turned their back on him.
Oh.
But they all came up and asked if he would allow them to sleep with her.
Oh my, okay.
Because in the Maasai tradition, you have many wives. In the old tradition, it's not always true anymore. You can have many wives, and if your friend asks to sleep with your wife, you can't turn him down if he hasn't offended you. But if there's a baby, it's your responsibility. Because children and cattle are well.
Okay.
Like I said, that's a tradition. Even young Maasais will tell you, no.
We don't do that anymore.
One wife is plenty. They're getting that Western attitude very fast.
Oh, okay.
So we got off track, but it's kind of fun.
That's really interesting. Well, I do think it's fascinating, and I love exploring other areas of the world and the culture. And yes, there's always going to be some form of unrest or people not necessarily getting along, but I think that for the most part, your little corner of the world for right now is relatively peaceful, and people have found out how they can get along, and they do it, they succeed. And I think overall that's the underlying message that I like to underscore, is that we can get along if we try.
It's had its touchy moments, and it may in the future, but actually, if you look at Kenya from the outside, Kenya is considered one of the more progressive, Western-oriented, fast economically growing, and in terms of population and infrastructure, Kenya is expected to grow faster than I think any country in the world over the next 10 years. I think they said $2 trillion in the economy over the next 10 years.
Oh, wow.
The big question here is, are Kenyans ready? And I'm not sure anybody's ready for the 21st century. But, Kenyans all do banking on their cell phones. They don't have checkbooks. They've skipped into even the smallest village. The illiterate village, there's one woman who speaks English, and she's the banker with a cell phone, and she takes the cash from their sales of trinkets or whatever it is, and then she goes to town and deposits it in her M-Pesa. That's the app on the phone. It deposits it in her M-Pesa account, does the shopping for the shopping list people are going to bring it back to the village.
That's fantastic. In many ways, very much more advanced and more embracing of technology than in other areas of the world. That's great.
Well, I was telling somebody the other day, I said, one of the things Kenya really needs is roads, and the Chinese are helping. They're helping. The U.S. is finally opened up the checkbook again, giving money for building roads. And I said, Kenya can do anything they want. They could say, if you're going to build a road, it's got to be covered with solar cells.
Oh, okay. And then they would do that. That's
and then you have free electricity.
Yeah.
And then, if Toyota wants to build a plant, the Kenyans say, yeah, why don't you come here? And by the way, have free electricity for life. for your 100,000 square foot plant. That's kind of amazing.
That is. That's really amazing. So
or if you build a high rise, every window must be a photovoltaic cell, which is also possible.
Nice. So I like the way the economy and the technology and the culture and everything is merging there. That's really extraordinary. It's
a head-spinning world we live in. It's really, is the glass half empty or half full? Americans are asking themselves the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. And as we should be. I mean, it really is. It's a question about what we value and what we want to prioritize.
In Christmas Karma, this comes up. In the screenplay is, it just plays out. The camera's there, it's watching the characters. We see Willow, we see her daughters be the first one to drop in on her because she hasn't been returning her calls.
Mm-hmm.
This house is not ready, the house is disheveled. But in the book, there had to be a point of view, the omniscient point of view, I felt it kind of had to be justified. And because the book is an homage to Ann Tyler, I'm a huge fan of Ann Tyler, and Ann Tyler fans are very much at the core of this book's audience. Ann Tyler has been often referred to as someone who writes from an angel's eye view.
Mm-hmm.
Ann Tyler has no villains in her books. Okay, there are opponents, but it turns out they always have a softer side. They always learn their lessons. It always turns out they had somebody's best interest at heart. It's kind of marvelous. And I thought, okay, if I take that point of view, and this is an homage to Ann Tyler, why don't I make the narrator Willa's guardian angel?
Right, okay, and I love that about your book because you do have that very unique point of view.
Right, so the guardian angel introduces the book and says, by the way, you don't really know who I am, and by the way, I don't know who I am. I'm in the next dimension, but you asked me about heaven. I'm not in heaven yet, if there is one, but I'm not in your world either. But the angel explains that in my dimension, I can't so much as pick up a teaspoon. Okay, all I can do is I can see thoughts, I can see into the past, I can kind of see into the future, and I can kind of hang out with you, and maybe I can affect your thoughts, but you're the one who has to take action.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I really, if you want to talk about God as the unmoved mover, and the hierarchy of angels, and there's the archangels, and then there's the ones that, then it goes all the way down to to the spirits that run around causing trouble. That's like a hierarchy of action. Is that at the center of things, there's simply light, perfection, and consciousness. I mean, even there. I mean, I've read some books by some neuroscientists, of which one of them is a dear friend, and believe it or not, the ones that are searching for the biological basis of consciousness, one of the theories that's being advanced because they're running out of explanations is that consciousness is simply a property of the universe that we participate in.
Mm-hmm.
We're like radio receivers, and those who take time to meditate and look inside and are in touch with themselves might see it more or more vividly than some other people, and some other people who are acting like malefactors and perhaps not in their own interest and in the interest of their fellows may not see much of it at all, but it's still there.
Right.
That's a very appealing concept to me because, again, it's the whole idea God is all that there is. Maybe, and again, there's another branch of physics too. is the world a hologram? Is our consciousness creating our experience because we're being bombarded by all these experiences, but, we choose the reality that we participate in because no human brain could process it all. So we have to choose the little slice of reality that we experience.
Sure.
So that's cool too.
One of my favorite concepts is the fact that we are, the universe, aware of itself. Because we are made of stardust, if you look at our molecular structure. That's what we are. And
Absolutely.
you, I, conscious beings who can think about the universe, we are part of the universe. So we are the universe being aware of itself. Hands down.
And again, if you want to talk about purpose or whatever, why does the universe exist? The idea that it can become aware of itself to the extent that also then the intelligence becomes a co-creator that helps that in its evolution and future direction. I don't know. I can't think of a better explanation.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you. I agree. All right, Gerald, I want to touch on, because we're starting to get down, the clock is starting to tick down there, but I do want to touch on some of your other books too, because Christmas Karma, yes, everybody should go out and grab this book because it's for families, it's for people who have a sense of humor, it's for people that have the need and the desire to look outside and understand more, especially this time of the year. But you've also written fabulous books like Bonfire of the Vanderbilts and How to Lie with Charts. You're very prolific and have a lot to offer. Can we talk about some of your other books?
Yeah, sure. I made a career writing business and technical books. I wrote more than 30 under contract before I won't say I got semi-retired, but I just shifted to writing fiction exclusively. So I've written 8 novels, of which 7 are published right now. And Christmas Karma was not the first either. My first was a series of 3 satiric novels, the Rollo Hemphill Misadventures, which are all about a young man failing upward and making unfortunate life choices in his choice of romantic relationships. And then I wrote Mr. Ballpoint, which is about it's kind of a comedy about the actual story of the ballpoint pen in 1945, the Huckster Wars. And Chokehold, which is kind of a gritty crime novel.
Ooh, yeah.
The most recent one, and Bonfire of the Vanderbilts is fascinating in that book took me the longest to write. That book took me about 20 years. That's an art, history, art scandal, historical fiction book set mostly in the 19th century in Paris. And that's a hefty book. I recommend that for winter reading, under the covers, January, February, because it's a thriller in some ways, like the movie Gaslight. The main character in the present doesn't quite know whether her husband's trying to make her crazy, but she's the art historian who's researching this scandal of the Vanderbilt family in the past. So it's a very, very complex thriller kind of a book, but all tied up with art history, so it's great fun. Then I just completed a book, my first, what I would call literary fiction. Clifford Spiral is about a middle-aged man who's had a stroke, and he's trying to piece together the bits of his life that he remembers. He's trying to find meaning in his life, which is pretty intense. And then I decided to shift gears after that, and the one I'm working on now is called Preacher Finds a Corpse.
Ooh, that's intriguing.
And it's about a Baptist preacher who finds that his best friend has shot himself in the middle of a field in southern Missouri, and there's just it's like the onion. There's just layers and layers of not only mystery, but also what you'd call ontological crisis. The minister finds that his faith is somewhat tested. Why do bad things happen to good people? This was not anybody who, deserved to die. And yet, did he really kill himself? Or, his suicide note says, there were people out to get him. Well, was he just being paranoid, or were people really out to get him?
Right, right. Just like you, Gerald, you are a man of so many layers. I love it. I love it.
Well, you have to like being with yourself and your own thoughts, okay? If you're not happy with your backside being in a chair, I really don't recommend writing as a profession.
True.
And, there's that old saying is, the writers' spouses have to understand that when they're staring out the window, they're actually working hard.
That's true. That's true. Leave me alone. I am not staring off into space. I am finding the motivation for my next character. Leave me alone. Right.
Right.
Okay, really quick. Where can people find out more about you, your books, find you on social media?
Well, I'm actually very actively blogging right now at my personal blog, GeraldEverettJones.com. That's EVERETT. Gerald with a G, GeraldEverettJones.com. And every day I'm asking one of a series of questions from Christmas Karma. Mm-hmm. In other words, how do you feel about people dropping by the house unannounced? Mm-hmm. Or what is your guardian angel look like? And then the cover of the book, the cactus,
I love the cactus.
The cactus dressed in a Santa hat. How do you get the inspiration for that? No, the story's there. So if you're curious, go look.
Oh, I'm yes, I love that.
We just posted the explanation yesterday of how I saw the cactus for the first time in Santa hat. So GeraldEverettJones.com, I'm blogging there, and then I'm host of a podcast called Get Published Radio, and GetPublishedRadio.com gives advice to authors and self-publishers on how to do what I've done is not only publish but self-promote and sell the three copies that I'm famous for.
Yes. Love a self-published radio. A big fan, and you do such a great, wonderful service to other writers as well. Very commendable.
Well, it's great. It's just enormous fun, and we have some amazing guests, and my co-hosts are. I have a young millennial journalist who's, she won't take any grief from anybody, and then we've got my crusty old friend Tom Page, who is a very well-reputed sci-fi author who is also something of a history buff, and he's got opinions.
They do. I love the show. It is such a great show. We will definitely check that out. It's Get Published Radio. Gerald, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure.
Desiree, just a thrill. Thanks so much.
You are welcome. Once again, my name is Desiree Duffy, and thank you for being with us today on Books That Make You. You can find out more about Books That Make You on our website. Gerald happens to be on there too. Just go to booksthatmakeyou.com, and you can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Until next time, enjoy all the books that make you who you are.
The executive producer for Books That Make You is Desiree Duffy. Produced and sound mastered by Phil Giangrande. Engineering by Dave Nabox. Social media and promotion by Bree Sweeter. For more, visit booksthatmakeyou.com.